Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I'd like to do a brain dump on Tolumnias. They are one of my favourite orchids, and quite honestly, with a few basic rules, they are so easy to grow. But those basic rules need to be stuck to. So before we get going out into the grow room and look at some plants, I thought we'd have a look at the place where they come from, basically. And I think the thing that you'll take away from looking at that map is the sheer amount of blue. The blue stuff is called the ocean, and all those little other bits is the land. So straight away you can see that these are mainly island inhabitants, and the main thing you get on islands in that area is some good weather, some bright sunshine, and humidity, and sea breezes. Breezes being another optimum word. So basically Tolumnias are found in many of these places on this map, right from the southern part of the United States down through Mexico and round through to Venezuela. But the main thing to take away from the map is the coastal regions, and they do like their coastal regions. Now, within some of those islands there is elevation, there is height, and some of them do grow up the mountainsides a bit. So some of them are cooler growing than some others, but most of them are found around and near the coasts. So warmth is quite important, but tailored by sea breezes. It's quite important. So that's where they come from. And then I thought we'd have a look at some of the sort of places they might grow in the wild. Now, I've taken some pictures off the internet. If I've upset anybody, all they've got to do is say, and I'll take the pictures down. But none of these pictures had copyright on them or anything to say that they shouldn't be used. So I'm using them. So here we've got one growing in the wild, and I like to try and find pictures of my orchids that grow in the wild. Okay, mine are hybrids, but they're close to their species. They're not miles away like the Phalaenopsis are. They still have the traits of the original species. And you can see that this is just hanging on twigs. It's not on the ground, it's above the ground. It's just hanging there. And all the little tiny roots will be all in around those twigs. Some of them might be down in the moss, but they just hang in little twigs. And here's a picture of another one. This one's growing on a larger branch. But notice what it isn't doing. It isn't growing in anything. It's growing on the branch. The branch isn't covered in moss and fern roots and other stuff. It's just a bare branch. That's what they like. They like their roots exposed. And again, another picture of one actually on a branch, but there's nothing on the branch. It's just hanging on to the bark. And given how small some of the Tolumnias are, some of the species, that's not a large branch. But look at the extensive root system. It goes right down that branch and out of the picture at the bottom. All those little tiny wispy roots, and that's something you don't really need to worry too much about. Some of the older roots on Tolumnias do go brown, and they do actually look dehydrated and dead. They're not. Don't give up on them. The new ones are nice and fleshy and white with green tips, and they push out. But after a while, a year or so, they do go brown. So don't worry if you see your roots going like that. If all of them go like that and your plant dies, yes, you need to worry, and you've probably done something wrong. And boy, wouldn't I love a collection like that. I just pulled that picture up. As I say, I couldn't find out whose it was, so I haven't asked permission, but I'm quite happy to, ask if I find out. But look at the variety of colours there. You've got deep pinks, reds, yellows, oranges, possibly every shade you could think of. Now, I know the blooms aren't enormous, but a lot of the Tolumnias make up for it in the sheer weight of numbers. And once you get a good plant established and it's pushing out 3, maybe even 4 new fans a year, and each one of those is going to put up 1 or 2 spikes, you can get mass bloomings. Once they get established and they're happy, they put out more than 1 spike at a time. Although most of the ones you tend to see for sale have 1 spike on. most of the ones I've bought either had no spikes or one spike. Okay, and before we go out and have a look at some plants and discuss them in more detail, these are some stills of ones that have actually bloomed for me, and unfortunately there's two missing because I just can't find the pictures. I know they've bloomed for me, it's in my notes, but I can't find the pictures. Anyway, that first one, that looks rather a dull one, quite honestly, but in reality it's not. Cameras often don't take the best pictures. This next one, this is one of the colour changes. This opens a very deep pink and then it fades to a paler pink. The red and the white on it stay the same. It's the pink that changes its tinge. And then this next one, the camera definitely doesn't do justice. This is Pink Brush, and that does open a lovely pink and then it fades to almost white over a period of time. So colour changer. Next one, Oriental Pear, that's actually out at the moment, out in the grow room. We'll see that one in a minute. One of my favourites, just simply because of the depth of colour. The yellow and the deep red is vibrant, really outstanding colours. And at the moment, my all-time favourite is Peach. Tolumnia Peach is just golden autumn colours. It's a smashing blend of colours. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, let's go and have a look at some plants and have a look at some roots and some of the growth patterns and things like that. Okay, I've got an assortment down to have a look at, and we'll have a look at each one in turn and just have a chat about them. We'll start at this end. You'll have to put up the circulating fans. I've turned the big extractor off, that's all that's going off. It's warm in here today. Now this one, this is what I would call a typical growth pattern. The fans come out in all different directions. You're never quite sure which side of the latest fan the next one's going to come from. Now that one's got two spikes on it. That's Sunset Pink. And this is just coming back into growth. Now you can see what I mean about the roots. The roots have a preference to not be in the bit of moss they've got. They try and escape. So you can see those roots have headed on up the bark away from the moss. Yeah, and some of these down here as well. You can see they like the bark, they're not so keen on the moss. Now there's very little moss on that plant really, but in the summertime, if I didn't have any moss at all, I'd be out here watering these 2 or even possibly 3 times a day, which I can't do. So they have to put up with some moss. But this one's just coming back into growth now and pushing out some new roots. But those old roots are not dead. They're still functional. Just because they're a browny colour, they're not dead. They even look crisp, but they still work. So that's quite a typical looking Tolumnia. That's that one. Next one. This one's a bit of a climber. This one's definitely trying to escape. This is Tolumnia Peach. It's in spike at the moment and it's one of my favourite blooms. So they leave the old fans behind and push new fans out. And this one is trying to escape, literally. The latest 2 growths on there are quite a long way away from the bark. It has a preference for its roots to not be in that moss. It's climbing all over the bark. That's what they like to do. You can see it doing it. Yeah, if it preferred the moss, then all those roots would be heading straight for the moss, but they're not. They're moving away from it. That's a good root system on that one, very good, but I have to make sure that those aerial roots get a good watering, and I'll water one in a minute just to show you what I do. Here's a little one. Again, this one's just coming back into growth now. Now, totally different type of looking Tolumnia. This one's a thick, chunky one. It's almost a succulent. You know, if you look at the size and structure of those leaves, they're substantial. And this latest growth is a much better growth than the previous one, the one when I got it. It was a very young plant when I got it. Again, roots on the bark. That's what it likes. Either aerial, you can see even the ones that have pushed down through that moss, they've escaped out the bottom of it, trying to find some bare bark to be on. That's what they like to do. That one is Jarak Flyer Black Magic, if it ever blooms. I forget which ones I've lost the pictures for. It's a nuisance. And then this one is again just about starting to push some new roots out. Sometimes the roots precede the new fans, sometimes they grow at the same time, and sometimes they grow after the fans start getting quite large. So, you know, these were once classed as oncidiums. This is Big Bang, and you can see again some of those roots have headed round the back to get away from the moss. They're heading up the bark, yeah, down through the bark. Nice little plant, that one. I like that one. That's quite a typical looking Tolumnia. There's a couple of new fans just starting on that one. Let's have a look at this one. This is my only species at the moment, and quite honestly this always looks dehydrated, but it isn't. That's how it is. Yeah, it's pushed out quite a few new new roots lately, and look at the root system on the bark. Yeah, you can tell that's how it likes to be. That moss has hardly got any roots in it. The roots are either in the air or on the bark. So much so, it decided to escape round the back. It just wants to be on the bare bark. That's what they like. Running out of space here. This one has got a purple tinge. I would suggest that this particular hybrid, which is Popoki Mitsu, again, roots around the back. The roots have escaped. They've got away. They like to hide from the light. So on those little twigs where they naturally grow, the roots run underneath the twigs, not along the top. They run underneath the twigs to hide from the sun. It also keeps them a little bit moisture longer. They get a lot of heavy dew first thing in the morning. That's their main hydration for a lot of the year. The dew forms virtually every day around dawn, and things get quite damp around that time, and moisture on a branch will run down to the bottom of the branch. Guess where the roots are? Running along the bottom of the little twigs and branches. It's where they get their most hydration. Now that particular hybrid is objecting to the level of light it's getting. That is too purple. Yeah? There's too much light on that one, so that one's just about to get moved. It's a good plant though, a lot of fans on there. Are there a lot of blooms? Are there? Hell, come on. But when that does bloom, it should be a good one. Okay, the two that are actually out in bloom at the moment, these can bloom on very young plants. This is a single fan with a very poor root system. I'm hoping the next fan that it puts up will have a better root system. But it's still capable of blooming. This is Tolumnia Fantastic, this one. And isn't it? Let's get it in a bit of sunshine there. Isn't it fantastic? There's combinations of colours there. Deep red, maroon I would say, with white edges on those top parts. You've got the bright yellow near the centre, and then you've got a much brighter red surrounded by pink. Smashing. And then this one here is the other one out in flower. Certainly my favourite bloom at the moment, until Tolumnia Peach comes out anyway. It's on its way, give it chance. Yeah, so another one, quite a typical growth pattern, fans pushing out in all directions, trying to form a little bush. Not the best of root systems if you took it at face value. Yeah? Because a lot of those roots look dead. Well, they're not. They're still functional. They're still on the go. Okay, so that's some sample plants. Various sizes, different size fans, slightly different methodologies of growth. Now remember that these were once classed as oncidiums. They were called equitant oncidiums, and most people say they got that nickname from the fact that if you turn them upside down they look like the shape of people's legs sat on a horse. But I've also read another theory, And it relates to the fact that if you view the leaves, they're triangular. Yeah? Their cross section is triangular. If you cut through one and look at the cross section, it's like a triangle, so the sides are equal. So maybe that's another way of looking at it. But yeah, so Tolumnias. I'll just show you how I water them, but I'll have to set that up first. I'll put the camera down. Okay, let's see if I can hold the camera with my left hand without it wobbling all over the place. All I do to water my Tolumnias is that. And I don't care if it goes on the plant, I don't care if it goes down in the leaf joints, my circulating fans are going to dry that plant off within about an hour. So I just make sure the bark and the roots are soaked. And I mean soaked. None of this dribbling, no little tiny sprayers. The plant is now wet. Yep, the bark's wet, the roots are wet, some of the plant's wet, but it's wet. Yeah, so that is its watering. That ought to be done in the morning. In the winter, absolutely in the morning, to give it a chance to dry off, especially if your temperatures are going to drop down at night. Yeah, try and go into the lower temperatures with a dry plant. Okay, now in the winter time, when we've only got 8-9 hour day lengths, plant doesn't get long enough to use its water up like it would in the summertime, and it hasn't got the temperatures there day or night. So I tend to water about every third day, and it takes a day for them to start to dry off, and then they go a couple of days. They're not growing much that time of year, so they don't need as much water, and that's what they get. Come this time of year, I'm every other day at the moment, and literally if we get a couple of days like today with the sunshine, I'll be watering every single day. I'll still do it in the morning. The mornings are getting earlier and earlier now, so that time of day will get earlier, gives them plenty of time to dry off, and with my circulating fans whizzing away here, they dry off, so I don't have to worry about the plant getting wet. So I give them a good soak. Now, as far as feeding is concerned, a lot of these plants are growing in quite exposed areas, often in full sun, on shrubs, you know, quite low down near the ground. So what haven't they got above them a lot of the time? Trees and stuff. So the moisture they get from the dew has got virtually no nutrients in it. These do not need a lot of feed. And even the ones that have got trees above them, they don't get rained on all the time. They get a lot of their moisture from this morning dew, the effect of being near the coast, and you know that's just the dew point that actually happens with the drop of temperature around dawn. It just happens. Yeah, so I don't give them a lot of food. During their real active growing season, with roots pushing out all over the place, I would feed at a low level every other watering. So every other watering they're getting a flush with pure RO water. The next watering they'll get a low level feed. Yeah. If a plant is particularly vigorous, it could go 2 feeds and a flush. I wouldn't go 3, they don't need it. And I do like to flush them, especially as there is some moss on the bark. I do like to make sure that is flushed clean every now and again. In the winter, they get virtually no food. They just get water. They're not growing much. There's no point. Quite honestly, I'd just be pouring fertilizer down the sink, because they're not going to use it. They're just not growing much. So that's it. I think the most important thing to take away, if you're thinking of going with Tolumnias, you're going to think, right, what shall I pot them in? It's the wrong thought. The thought should be, what am I going to grow them on? You can see they don't like to be in anything. They like to be on things. What you choose to grow them on has an awful lot of variety in there. I've seen them growing on tiny little terracotta pots. There's nothing in the pot. You just stick the plant in, the roots attach to the pot and come out the hole in the bottom, and they just attach to the pot. I've seen them growing in open mesh baskets, again, with nothing in there. I've seen them growing in both of those cases with a couple of lumps of charcoal or a couple of lumps of lava rock. You can even use broken pieces of terracotta pots. But the main thing to think of them is that they grow on things, they don't grow in stuff. So they like their roots exposed. And they like quite high light levels, but as you can see, I've pushed me luck with one of them. Now again, that will go back to its makeup. It's a hybrid, and in its makeup could be one or two shade lovers that don't like such high intensity with the light. Yeah, and it's objecting, and they show you when they're objecting. They get a purple tinge to them, so they tell you. You know, if you've got deep, lush, dark green leaves, I would suggest it's not getting enough light. If your leaves are turning yellow and brown, you've burnt it, or it's dying for some other reason. They shouldn't go yellow and brown. They should be a nice, bright, attractive green. Yeah? That sort of colour. Nice, attractive green. If it's too deep, not enough light. If it goes purple, too much. Yeah? Somewhere in between is good. Now, as I've said before, these are one of my favourite orchids. And if you stick to those basic rules, they must dry out in between water. If you keep the roots soggy by planting them in things, they will rot, and then your plant will suffer and eventually probably die. So think of them as, you know, sort of a bit like Vandas. They like their roots hanging around, you know, they like the air around them. But they still need to be hydrated, and certainly in their growing season, every single day. You need to water those roots and give them a good soak first thing in the morning. And if you are in very high temperatures and you haven't got good circulation, they'll still dry off during the day. If you've got incredibly good circulation and high temperatures, you might have to water them twice a day. So there is a little bit of a workload potentially. Luckily in the UK we don't get too much of that, and normally it's very rare I have to water more than once a day, and they're perfectly happy. Not too much feed. They don't need it, they can't use it. Those roots are quite delicate, little fine roots. You know, you start chucking high levels of feed on those, you're going to burn them. And burnt roots also look brown, but they're also not working because they've been burnt. So don't feed them too high. And if you're going to try them, you know, just try a couple, see how you get on. It's just an adapting to the way they like to be. And as I said, I think the most important thing to take away is that they have incredibly attractive, vibrant colours. They also have subtle colours. They're not always shouty, loud colours. Some of them are very soft and gentle, pastel shades. But an assortment of colours that's absolutely brilliant, you know. And as far as I'm concerned, they're up the top of the list of my favourites. That's probably why I've got 14 of them. I did have 15, but the scale at 1. Right, bugs. I've never seen a mealybug on any of my Tolumnias, but I have had really bad scale infestations. They get down in those sheaths. You see at the base of that, the one that's actually in flower, if you follow that one down, and right at the base are little sheaths. Now if you look at most of my fans, the sheaths have gone. I've tried to strip them off. The scale get right down in there, and that's quite a substantial plant, but some of them, you know, those fans aren't so big, and the base of the fan is quite small. You get a colony of scale in under the sheaths at the base, and they will eat the base of the fan off, and it will just collapse and die. It'll just, you know, it'll give up because the nutrients can't get through. They eat them off. So if you've got scale on your Tolumnias, deal with them fast. I spent a long time mucking about with the Q-tips and the alcohol, killing the ones I could see. And they weren't the ones doing the damage. The ones doing the damage were the ones I couldn't see down in under those sheaths. So deal with them, whatever way you see fit, but deal with them and don't let them get a hold. And try and keep the base of your fans sheath free. Okay, happy growing. If you haven't tried Tolumnias, I don't see why you shouldn't, unless you live in a very dry atmosphere. You know, these are not going to be brilliant in the home. They need that air circulation, they need their roots to dry fast, but they also like quite good humidity. We're back to the map again, yeah? A lot of these are coastal growing plants. They're used to moist air, they're used to moving air, yeah? So if you can replicate those things, then you can grow Tolumnias. And if they sound too difficult, then have a think about how you can get rid of some of the difficulties, because they are worthwhile. Okay, hope you've enjoyed that one, and if anybody thinks I'm going to do a culture video for Phalaenopsis, you better think again, because I'm not. And there are some of my orchids that I can't do it for. I can't do dendrobiums. You know, the genus is too vast. There are so many different types and different ways of growing them that they need. You know, same with bulbophyllums. There's just too many. You know, there's ones that don't like bright light, those that do. You know, so they're too vast. But I can think of some others I've got dotted around that I can do this type of video for. I'll see how I feel about it later. But in the meantime, if you've got Tolumnias, enjoy them. If you haven't, have a think about it. They're not that difficult.